Flower Shop. Chapter 12. Candlelight and Clarity. Read by Paige Lindsay. Viktor had taken Hermione to the local junior Quidditch training ground to meet the children he coached on occasion. Viktor was not surprised when they had bombarded her with questions and requests for autographs. She had fulfilled their requests beautifully and promised to return with Viktor whenever she could. The fact that she had said she would return with him made Viktor grin, knowing that she was planning on spending more time with him. He had booked reservations at his favourite restaurant for mid-evening, not knowing what time she preferred to eat. They sat at a corner table at the small, cosy eatery, and Viktor dimmed the candle that burned above them, thinking the light too harsh for dinner. Viktor, today has been so wonderful. I wouldn't have known where to start looking around Vratsa, and you have shown me some of the loveliest places. Thank you. She smiled up at him, and he took her hand in his. I wait years to show you my town. You're the first person I ever wanted to give a tour to. He desperately wanted to say something else, but his nerve eluded him, and he took the safe road. Hermione was in a deep state of confusion. If Viktor had waited years for her to return, why had he not answered her letters? She knew she had to ask him, so with a deep breath, she took the plunge. "Viktor," she began, and he looked up at her with hopeful dark eyes. "Why did you not reply to the letters I sent you after the war?" She felt his hand tense around hers. Perhaps he thought she would never bring it up. Perhaps he was ashamed. All she knew was that as soon as she had asked, she wanted to draw the question back and cease it from ever existing. Viktor sat in shock. He had never received any letters from Hermione. He knew this to be a fact. He would have replied to them the very instant he received them if these letters did in fact exist. A pool of anxiety now formed in his stomach. What if the letters had been thrown out with his parents' junk mail? What if they had thrown them away, knowing he didn't live there anymore? "Hermione, I never received any letters after the war. I sent you letters, but I never got a reply." Hermione's eyes widened at learning the knowledge that not only had Viktor not received her letters, he had been sending her letters that she had never received. "Viktor, I never got any of your letters, else you know I would have replied." She couldn't understand what could have happened. "I sent the letters to an address that Potter gave me. I see him at a Quidditch match and ask, and he gave me the address to Alto," Viktor said adamantly. Hermione's free hand flew to her mouth when she realised what had happened. "Oh, good God!" she cried, not believing what had happened. Viktor pressed her to explain. "I sent the letters to an address Harry had found for me at the ministry. I trusted him. I never thought he could do something so awful," she cried softly in disbelief. Viktor couldn't quite understand what was going on, as he knew Hermione was hiding something from him. "Hermione, tell me," he pleaded to her. She asked, removing the hand from her face. "I wanted to get in contact with you because I couldn't stop thinking about you. I wanted to see how you were and wondered if you were all right after the war," she sighed, knowing she would have to tell all. "I told Harry I wanted to come to Bulgaria to see you. The crush I had on Ron was long gone, and I wondered if I could see you, maybe reconnect, that Harry would stop badgering me to date Ron. I never thought he would go so far as to give us false addresses." She looked down at the table, ashamed. When she eventually looked up, she saw nothing but rage in Viktor's eyes. "Potter gave me the wrong address on purpose," he spat through his teeth. "He knew of my feelings for you, even if I wasn't sure of them myself. And well, he loves Ron, and he wanted us to be together more than anything. He still does." Viktor's eyes burned with anger, but they softened ever so slightly at the mention of Hermione's feelings. "I wanted to write to you because I wanted to know you were okay after the war. I still care. Feelings never go away. I knew during the war I could never court you, but when the war ended, I thought maybe there is a chance. So I wrote." Hermione sighed raggedly, thinking of the loveless relationship she had to endure because of Harry's plot. Viktor burned with a white-hot rage. He knew he should have never trusted Potter. He knew he should have gone to the ministry to find her address himself. He thought he might feel sorry for himself for being denied the time with Hermione, but his heart ached for her. She had been forced into a relationship she did not want to be in. He was ready to apparate to Hogwarts and beat the new professor to a pummel, but his thoughts soothed as Hermione brought his hand to her face. "Shh, there is no reason to be angry anymore. It has happened, but I am here now. Harry cannot scheme with us here together." He sighed, knowing she was right. "But you spend so long in a loveless relationship. Kiss man you do not love, lie with man you do not love." He felt himself urge, thinking of the ginger boy forcing himself upon her. She chuckled into his hand, and he looked at her in pure shock. "Oh no, Ronald never got that far, never touched me like that. I left truly unscathed," she assured him, and he sighed, happy that she had not been forced to give her body. He took her remaining hand in his and looked deep into his eyes. "Hermione, I waited years for you to be ready to date. I didn't know of these letters, but it sounds like things have changed. Will you let me court you?" Hermione had never heard a sweeter proposal. She felt like a character from her Jane Austen novels being courted. She blushed a deep shade of pink and nodded softly. "Yes, of course, there is nothing I would like more." Her statement was true. After the war, it was Viktor's arms she imagined holding her, not Ron's. It was his deep eyes she longed to gaze into. She had not realised it at the time, but she had yearned to be near him from the moment the war ended. Viktor felt weightless. He had waited so many years to hear her say that one word to him. Yes. She seemed touched by the old-fashioned style of dating that his mother had taught him about. He had never wanted to court anyone before, no one but her. He wanted to shower her with affection and treat her to the finest things, and knowing he could do that now dulled the fiery rage that burned in his stomach. They enjoyed a fine dinner with soft pork doused in a rich sauce and roasted vegetables. Each sipped on a large glass of wine, and all seemed peaceful in this moment. They had shared a warm chocolate dessert and chuckled, feeding each other. Viktor ended up with chocolate smothered around his mouth, and Hermione felt sinful as she thought of licking it off. Viktor must have noticed her deep blush as he raised an eyebrow, surprised at her provocative mind. Viktor walked Hermione home, hands entwined, and when they reached her door, she thought whether she should invite him in or not. Deciding against the idea, they stood in the doorway for a moment. She placed her bag onto the table where she kept her letters and other everyday items. When she turned back to Viktor, his eyes burned with an emotion that she couldn't quite detect. Viktor had waited so long for this moment, the moment when he could kiss Hermione once again. He stroked her hair, wrapping a finger around one of her curls, and then caressed her face, soothing a thumb over her lower lip. He had never seen anything so exquisite. He knew he had to control himself and be gentle with her, especially for the first kiss, so he cupped her face with his right hand and let his left curl around the small of her back. She placed both of her hands on his broad chest and linked her lips quickly. When he saw her tongue dart over her bottom lip, he could control himself no longer. He brushed his lips against hers, a feather-like kiss that made her swoon. He then deepened the kiss for a brief moment, pressing his lips tenderly against hers, then pulled away. He laughed as she pouted, giddy with the fact that she wanted more. But he knew he had to do this right, and taking her to bed on what could be called their first date was not the way to do it. He knew she was worth so much more than a quick affair. He pressed a soft kiss to her cheek. "Good night, Hermione," he cooed to her, and she felt herself swoon. "Good night, Viktor," she whispered before closing the door, letting her eyes fall shut, being in a state of pure bliss for the first time since she was 15.